That's that's such a great industry, right? College admissions, college, everything about college is great, right? Mr. C, college counselor, my host today, co-host.
Hello, great to see you. Yeah, it can be. It
I don't,
depends on how you kind of figure it out, but
I don't
sure.
even know if that was the right way to start this, but
Sure.
hey, so for everybody who's watching, we connected on TikTok,
We did.
right? And I was
Yeah.
intrigued by your all the information you're giving from a college perspective. Um, but you tell me about you and what you do and how you're helping kids.
Yeah. So I started right out of college. I had no idea what admissions did or anything. I was more of a res life person and worked in residential life for a couple of years, but had no inclination of doing that. Fell literally into admissions 1 month after graduating because I was like, I need a job. And I loved where I went to school and I would represent them and everything. Understood then the full scope of admissions, did that for 8 years.
Yeah.
Proud to say that I was their first regional rep. So back when regionals weren't a big thing, now they're all over the place. But that was a new territory there. But kind of miss the human connection when you're doing regional. You're stuck at your apartment and traveling around and everything. So had the opportunity to get into a school in one of my areas and that I used to travel to, and then fell in love with that school. Had a great affinity because I'm Jesuit educated. That's a big thing for me. I went to a Jesuit high school. I went to a Jesuit university, worked for that university, worked for a Jesuit high school, and did that for a while. But I now work at a school in my area that's for neurodivergent learners, students that have learning challenges and
Oh,
differentiating learning and stuff like that. People that I have found, Dr. McGuire, that really think that maybe college couldn't be possible for them. So
right.
during the pandemic, just to encapsulate how I arrived to where we connected,
Mhm.
I was noticing a lot of kids, a lot of families were just left, to be honest with you, in the dust. Like they didn't have school, they kind of had virtual, but a lot of obviously kids and families don't have dedicated college counseling. They may have a school counselor, somebody there who's doing a multitude of different things, and great respect to my colleagues on that side. But I thought, these kids worked really hard. I need to do something. They don't know what's going on, and the sort of the trajectory of communication wasn't really working out during the pandemic. So I just started doing it and been doing it ever since. It's been a little over, I think I'm a little over 3 years now that I've been
Wow.
doing it. Or yeah, close to 4 now if I think about it. But yeah, and I just enjoy it. I give people information that I come across and things that they may not even realize and things about the admissions process to get them also on track, but understand the broader scope of kind of what's going on.
All
So
right, so give me a couple examples as to what information you give them,
yeah.
and then what are some of your wins at the end of the day? What at the end of the day? Wow, that was a good day.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I try to do is tackle elements of the process to keep them in track. Some of my best, I think, or more well-received pieces of information on my channel. I did the whole thing where I went through every single Common App essay and kind of
Mm.
how to approach it, how to sort of magnify yourself within it, a good aspect of what colleges and universities are looking for within that, and there's 7 questions, the last one being topic of your choice, but it did 7 different videos on the different Common App essays. And it's been beautiful because the Common App hasn't changed their essays in the last couple of years. So I haven't had to change the essays at all. And it's been really helpful because when I go live not pretty regularly, but on occasion.
Mhm.
And I try to do as much as I can. But people say, well, what would be good topic to do this or that or the other? And I go, oh, you can just refer back to my essay series and that kind of thing. One area, though, I do want to point out that a lot of people don't know is kind of like the socio-political environment and how that's affecting college admissions, college retention, the college space in general. So one of
Let's
the
talk
things,
about it.
yeah, one of the things that I've been really thinking about is the DEI stuff that's happening right now. There's a big sort of guidelines or deference, I
But
guess.
explain what that means, though.
Yeah, diversity, equity, inclusion. So the Department of Education came out with a statement basically saying you cannot do certain things this isn't going to be against the law. You will not receive federal funding, colleges and universities, so you must cease and desist this, that, and the other. I'm really encapsulating it
Yeah.
into layman's terms, but it was sort of like this overreaching thing. It was a recent video that I just did. There's been some more clarification on it, so I'm preparing another video to kind of give people more information. But again, this is stuff that's going to affect their transition into the college world. You know, if you're looking for a college or university that's going to offer specific majors or programs that are under fire these days or might be gone, I think
Hmm.
people need to be aware of that. My wins, as you said, I mean, the win, to be honest with you, is when a person contacts me in some way via a message or on live and says, "You helped us. My kid's now at blank blank university as a result," and find that incredibly rewarding. That's the goal of what I'm trying to do here, is
Hmm.
trying to help people understand and do that. And you know, no topic I feel is not worth tackling. There are some that are harder than others, but I try my best
Yeah.
and get going on that. So that's probably the biggest win. I don't monetize my channel. I don't charge people anything. Like, I work full time. I work at a school. I have my own private business too. I do private college consulting as well for certain students and that kind of thing. But, it's something I would just want to do.
Yeah, you're passionate about it.
I am.
Where do students and families, I call them family units, but whatever,
Mhm.
where do they get jammed up, do you think, the most making the transition from high school to college? Like, what are some of the obstacles where they would need somebody like you?
I think understanding how to arrive at what I say is fit. You know, really, I'm trying to understand your own mindset on what works for you, translating that to then to what a college or university can offer. So, for example, I was just meeting with a student actually about this thing because the dad asked me, like, well, where do we go from here and how do we find that? I said, well, how you find that is basically visiting or investigating schools and sort of latching onto things that you find positive, that you find fits who you are. I always say fit comes here from the kid's brain, parents do,
Yeah.
art, right? And then mom and dad's checkbook. Those are your three fits. That's kind of how this process goes. And I think that's one of the biggest or hardest challenges and hurdles to go to. The other big thing that I think a lot of families trip up, and rightly so, this process changes every year. Things change. I mean, I'm about to see, everything was test optional during the
Right.
pandemic because no one could literally take a test. We're starting to see that pendulum go back. We're
Yeah.
starting to see college universities, not a ton yet, but I expect some more in the coming months that are going to make this announcement of we're going back.
Hmm.
So to be on the safe side, I have to tell families, you need to take a test. We're the kid. And some go, really? I don't want to. And I go, no, that old way of thinking is not applicable now. You're gonna delay your options. You're gonna hurt yourself in some way in terms of.
Is this test optional process that's working its way back, like we talked about? Is that like follow the leader, you think, with schools, or how does that switch get turned?
I think it's two things. I think one, you're right on with that. I think a lot of schools go, okay, if they're going to require, I think we should too. You have to remember too, connected to that, a lot of times it's not the admissions office that makes this decision.
Oh.
It's usually a governing board, it's a state board, if it's a public university. To be honest with you, and not to, be disrespectful, but it's a lot of people that aren't involved in the admissions process that don't realize sometimes the intricacies. So that's obviously one part. The other thing we've got to remember about testing is the college board that runs the SAT, among other things, APs, PSAT, and then the ACT, they're not for profit, not for profit. Okay. They are companies though. They're companies that won't go away. They're not going to go away. So they
Hmm.
still want to make their product relevant.
Hmm.
And we've seen some major changes. I mean, the SAT went all digital about a year and a half ago. ACT's going in that direction. They probably will be all digital soon.
Do
They're
you
not
think that's for
quite
the
there.
better?
The digital?
Yeah.
I think it has pros and cons. I will tell you that the one thing I like is the ease. The ACT is a lot shorter now. I think the students are more adept to taking a test via online. I think there is still propensity of cheating, and there's some things that I think still need to be ironed out. They've done a pretty good job. I was real worried last, the PSAT went virtual exclusively, not this year, but last year. A lot of us were nail biting. We're like, is
Mhm.
this gonna work? And it really did, in my opinion. I mean, it had its lapses. There were some delays technically and that kind of thing, but then College Board picked that up. So it really wasn't as big of a kerfuffle as we thought it was going to be with that.
Yeah.
Um, and I will say the one thing that I think is a hindrance on it is the students they have to bring their own technology. It's not like,
Uh,
the school's going to provide 300 computers for students to take the test digitally. So that in line comes with some issues and challenges, especially for those students that don't have computers.
hmm
So you have
Yeah.
to remember that it's sort of this, they're wading their way through. I'm hopeful about it. The SAT is also they're about 3.5 hours. It's less than 4 hours now. So this has streamlined it a bit. The ACT is still the same time period, but
Just remember everybody scrambling during that period. Both
right,
parents, schools, right? It was like everybody was on a merry-go-round.
right,
But here we
totally.
are. The
Yeah,
only thing I wanted to say was though the transition, getting back to what we were
yeah,
talking about earlier, the transition from high school to college. Like there's still a lot of there's a population of parents who did not go to college
correct.
and want to put everything or the responsibility on the schools to I guess there's some variation to
Mm,
groom them as to what they should do or not do, and that may be depending on the school district, right?
yeah. And it depends on the family, obviously, too, right? Like I've worked with some students who are what you have now termed, but in to say it more succinctly, just first generation college, right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
half first gen. Like my father did not go to a 4-year institution. My mother did, but not my father. But I mean, that's not the same. But I
Mhm.
can I can relate because I sometimes have families and parents that go, we've worked so hard to get to our kids, and obviously parents by nature want to have or establish for their kids a better opportunity, a bigger life for them. So
Mhm.
I have a lot of families that come to me who are in this kind of situation that you talk about, and they go, we don't know what we're doing, and we need help in order to do what we do. And of course, there are those parents that go, I don't know what I'm doing, and I can't help you, so you need to figure this out on your own. And I'm not punishing a parent for doing that per se, but
They
it
don't
does
know.
have to be a family kind of, there's got to be some involvement on some level.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now we talked about this before as one of our bullet points, but and we'll talk about it loosely because I don't want to get us into a jam here. But in terms like in terms like finances and planning,
Yeah.
that projection of where that child, with
Mhm.
grades or preference
Mhm.
where they want to go or not, but the price tag
Yeah.
sometimes does not equal out, the return on investment.
Yep.
Can you talk about that for a minute?
I can. So, I mean, let me just first state we are approaching, if not, we have already 100K a year for some
Yeah,
schools. I mean, we're looking at close to now 450, $500,000 for an undergraduate degree, right?
yeah.
At some schools, not the majority. I think one thing we have to remember is we hear about these things in the verse field of college admissions and financial aid, and we think, oh my God, college is too expensive. I always say there's three traps. One of them being the trap of financial feasibility. You can't just look at the price tag and think, well, there's no way we can afford it. So don't even bother looking at it. I always tell families it's free to look, other than the plane, train, or gas or whatever, but it's free to look at the school. You don't know what's really going to happen. And when the thing that people have to realize too is colleges and universities know their price tag. They do know that this could be a barrier. So what
Hmm.
they try to do is make sure that families, the vast majority of our people in our country can't afford 500K for an undergraduate degree. So they know that, and they still have to get a class. So they're
Hmm.
going to offer financial incentives like scholarships or financial aid or what have you, doing the best that they possibly can. There is a limit to that, obviously, right? But the thing you don't want to do is go into this feeling of just vagueness of, well, there's no way we can do it. You don't know that yet. So I always say the trap of financial feasibility, I mean, aside from our topic here, but I always say the trap of admissibility, where you basically go, well, the GPA is too high. I don't have that GPA. No, it's based on so many other things. And then
Hmm.
the trap of comfortability, where you only stick to what you like or what you know in your family. I'm like, there's so many schools out there. And that's another thing connected to this. If you're open to a wide variety of different schools that could fit, that aren't the big ones that we hear about all the time, or only the state university next door to you. If you look at some private liberal arts schools that you have no idea what they're about, but if you're open to it, that could be an incredibly affordable and very well good fit for you. So we'll
Right.
keep it open.
Yeah. So what about the return on investment though? Is there
Yeah.
some kind of calculator, some kind
Yeah.
of gauge, some strategy where if you're going to be a teacher, for example, in Pennsylvania,
Right.
maybe do your research. I mean, this is how I look at it. I could be wrong, and this is what's great about this conversation. Difference in opinion, possibly. But if you're if you're going to be a teacher in Pennsylvania and you know you're going to cap out at X,
Right.
I don't know. We're spending $400,000 for a school. I don't know.
Right.
Is that worth it?
The return on investment, it's not that I disagree with you, but I think sometimes it's a fool's paradise to look at college in that vein,
Okay.
because I'm a big fan also, and I think you have a valid point. I'm not saying that you don't, but I think equally so is the experience of college can lend itself to be another whole other host of opportunities for the student to then get the return on investment, if that's the lens that we're going to necessarily
Give
look
me an
at.
example.
So an example would be internships,
Mhm.
or projected, or a research opportunity with a professor, or a study abroad program that was fully funded that you knew nothing about. These kinds of things that enlighten a student, elevate their line of thinking, get them to think in different ways, that then are skills that are desirable for said employer, said school, said grad program, whatever the next step is for that student. So
Mhm.
those are things that we've got to also keep in mind, that the return on investment can be things we've never considered before. It's not about just getting the job. That's great. I'm all for getting a job, being employed, not living in your parents' basement forever. But the thing is, you also have to understand that you can't quantify the salary intended on said profession as the result of the success of the school.
I like that. I'm glad you added to that because that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, but I
Definitely.
but I get it. I mean, I have families, of course, that say there's no way we could afford it. How can we be assured that what we're paying into is going to be good? And what I say to families is, this is a process you've got to look at. Again, I go back to fit. Is the school not necessarily worth the investment, but what are the things that you're going to get out of it? I had a student today that I worked with who was interested in business major. I mean, very vague and broad.
Right. Yep.
So they said, how do we decipher that? I said, look at internships, look at career fairs, look at the connections that they have. Do they have study abroad programs that are connected to their business school? What are the opportunities that a student can get out of in those 4 to 5 years
Mhm.
that's going to return on the investment, but elevate them into a different world?
Let's go deeper into that because that's one of our talking points. The resources that colleges or institutions have or
Mhm.
not.
Right.
So elaborate a little more on those resources. Let's a little deeper
Yep.
as to what a student should do in terms of doing their due diligence.
When they're looking, if they have a major in mind, which we know well, the majority of our students who are looking at college usually don't know exactly what they want to major in just yet. That's perfectly fine. But then look at, how do they connect with the students? Are the students able to do projects, research, things connected with a professor? Do they know their professors? What is their student life like in this general sense? And if you know your major, then connect the dots in those ways as well, to sort of look at those things specifically. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important that students have to delve deep. They can't just visit a campus, like it, and then go, well, this works for me. Well, you don't know everything yet. You need to know a little bit more about it, and you have to do some research on said things. And that requires looking at their emails that they send you,
Right.
visiting the campus, of course, maybe going again to the open house. But, I think one thing, just a great example, is students sometimes get very unnerved in this day and age on maybe emailing a stranger. Like they'll say, I'm interested in anthropology, and they have a great anthropology department at a school. I say, email that professor that's the head of that department. They go, what? Why would I do that? And I go, because you have questions.
Yeah.
And can I tell you on the other side, they love it.
Oh,
Professors
cool.
love
Yeah,
those emails.
absolutely.
They do. They
Hmm.
love connecting with the kids because
Hmm.
here's a kid that's genuinely interested in the field that they're doing. And I mean, talk to a professor about their field, they'll talk your ear off, basically.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
they really want to know and they want to connect in that way. But students have got to delve deeper these days. The other thing to keep in mind, real important, things are changing at schools. I mean, with the financial outlook and the stressors that have come with education and, all those things, some schools are condensing programs, they're eradicating programs. So students have to really be on top of that too. How is this shifting or changing what I originally thought the school was going to offer me?
Hmm. Hmm. What about internships?
I mean, they're great. They're usually plentiful. You have to be gregarious about them in college. They're not just
Right.
going to be handed to you. A lot of people love to hang their hats on those colleges and universities that say that they're co-op programs.
Yeah.
They have those built into the curriculum. It's one or two programs. You can't always rely on that. You can't always rely that the said program is just going to give you the dream internship, the dream co-op. You've got to be proactive about it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it was a long time ago, but I did internships through my major that I had in college, but I had to go out and get them. I had to
Right.
talk to my professors. Professors are the wealth of knowledge because they're our intermediate connection between academic world and workforce world. They're
Hmm.
they're they're delving in both spheres. And so those are invaluable people that students should be taking advantage of.
I'm going to share my quick one example.
Please.
So, um, I relocated down to the Washington D.C. area,
Mhm.
and for the master's program, and I needed an internship, and I couldn't find any. I'm not saying the school didn't have them; it just wasn't a fit. I couldn't find one.
Yeah.
So my area was marketing business. I called the Super Bowl down in your neck of the woods, down in New Orleans,
Yeah.
and it was funny because it wasn't posted, and I called them. I had to jump through a couple of hoops,
Yeah.
right? But I think I was a little older too, a little more wise,
Yeah.
in that I needed it. But long story short, when I finally got a hold of the right person, he kind of chuckled. Really? So anyhow, long story short, went down there, worked for the week, got a free ticket to the Super Bowl,
I
and to
mean,
your point, one thing led to another thereafter.
right,
Yeah,
exactly. And it's all this like, and I mean, we come down to it in this day and age, it's all about who you know. It
absolutely.
really is. And the connections that you make. I always say this to students, we can have chat GPT and AI and internet and all these things. Nothing replaces human contact.
True.
Human contact is the backbone. Like we met electronically, but
Yeah,
here we are literally meeting face
right,
to face.
right. And
Yeah.
you have to admit, though, we have lost, not us, but the some
Yeah, in a
people.
way. I
In a
think
way.
we're trying to regain it though. One thing we're trying to do with our students in preparation, our seniors, we're very intense with our seniors and preparing them for this next stage. One of the things they do, there's an assignment coming up in their senior seminar class. We do this, it's like a college seminar, but they have to actually go out to the neighborhood, go to
Mm,
like a coffee shop or a store and start a conversation with a complete stranger.
I love it. I love it. Wow, what a new invention, right?
I know. And some of them are so terrified. They're like, what? And I'm
That
going,
is crazy.
yeah, but they
Yeah, I
have to
like
do
that.
it. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Did you want to talk about the finance piece at all?
Sure. I mean, what is there to say other than
Yeah,
like,
to piggyback off what we were talking about before,
yep.
but a little deeper, that um, what's the best recommendation for students and family unit to go about exploring the options to pay for this
Yep.
thing?
Well, first and foremost, a family can never automatically assume they're not going to get anything. You want to try for everything possible. So that means applying for financial aid. I mean, clearly, if you're making a certain level of amount income as a family unit where you know that you could afford college outright, and there are families that are like that, you probably shouldn't, but it doesn't matter. So you can try if you want. But a lot of people go into the assumption that they're not going to get anything, and that's simply not true in terms of, and that's financial aid, that's your need based. A lot of people categorize need based financial aid as just loans. It's not. It's work study program, it's grants that are not repayable, free money basically provided by the school. There's also still the federal grants. We'll see how that all pans out in the next couple of years. But But right now they stand as so the Pell and the SEOG. But then you have these scholarship opportunities, and scholarships don't necessarily, again, the feeling is that you got to be smart always to have scholarships. The majority of scholarships are based on GPA, but there could be talent-based, service-based, leadership-based. You never know. And they're both within the school, but also the outside scholarships. That is, I mean, we hear all the time that there's this vast amount of money that's never unclaimed in the outside scholarship world. I don't know if I always agree with that assumption. I think it's this innocuous, statement that people say. But the thing that students and families have to realize is that's just like applying to college. If you want money, if you want money from an outside entity, it's another whole process of applying and keeping up and keeping track and making sure that they have everything that they need. And it's a lot of work, but if you work hard enough in it, there is a good chance, never a guarantee, but you could offset the money with the outside scholarships. The one thing I want to mention that I think is never a good idea unless you're fully on board understanding parent loans. So there's things called the Parent Plus loans. They're federal backed, but they are different loans than the ones that the students get. The students can get a certain amount that's capped, usually deferred interest, deferred payments until they graduate or they're no longer in college.
Mhm.
Parent Plus loans, higher interest, usually connected to a lender. You have to start paying back. So one of the things that parents sometimes get themselves in a conundrum is they've taken out all this money for then 1, 2, 3, 4 years. We're talking like, 25, 30, 40 grand. You times that by four, then they're like $200,000. Oh my God, I owe $200,000. And it's like, yeah, you do. I had a family, a father come back to me, said, I made this and like, I'm really worried I won't be able to pay it back. I'm like, you don't have a choice. I mean, it is what it is. That's you elected to do that. So I don't really recommend Parent Plus loans. My thing is just like with fit, it's got to be a financial fit. And I know people
Mhm.
get all in like, oh my God, my son or daughter has this great opportunity to go to this amazing school. But if you can't financially afford it, I
That's
mean,
good points. Family units just sign their life away,
they
right?
do.
And I just did a video
Yeah.
today where greater than 50% of students, parents don't know the terms
Right.
and or what the payment's going to be
Correct.
thereafter.
One of the best, you always want to keep in touch with admissions representatives, people that are working with your file, but in the similar vein, when it gets down to it, 1, 2, 3 schools that are down to the final three or what have you, financial aid offices. You've
Hmm.
got to keep in touch with those people
Hmm.
because they're the ones that are also going to try their best to try to work with you. The thing to always remember, if you're admitted to a school, boy, do they really want you to come, but there's going to be a financial limit to how much they can give you. But things like appeals, things like, asking for, more money, or I'm in this situation, or there was information that wasn't on the financial aid forms that should maybe be taken into consideration. Those are things that you want to bring to light. You want to exhaust every opportunity you can to make it affordable.
And I'm glad you're sharing all this information. But
Yeah.
why do most, not most, it happens a lot, students um, don't pursue the scholarships, either merit or internal or external?
Because it's a
If,
lot of work.
yeah, right.
Because they're tired. They usually are by the time that those things. Let me just tell you, most of the internal scholarships are usually not a separate application. The college university says you're automatically considered. And I always say this not to sort of like make the scholarship less than, but if you think about it, internal scholarships are kind of like coupons.
Yeah,
It's
right.
college 30% off college. It's a way to attract more students. It's a way to honor them too. I don't want to any way, shape, or form take away from that because schools don't necessarily have to award any money. But I had a student come to me today. They got a scholarship to a school that they got admitted to, and they're like, I got $24,000. And I'm like, that's fantastic. And again, it was a way to attract. Now the students may be more seriously considering that. But the outside scholarships, I must tell you, it's like they usually start around in the December to on to the spring of their senior year, and students are tired. They just don't want to do it. And a lot of times these outside scholarships want just as much information
Mhm.
from like from an admissions thing. They want essays, they want letters, they want all these things.
Yeah.
Sometimes the scholarship thing, I got to tell you, they ask for a lot for not a lot. Like it's
Right.
all this information, all this effort for like a $500 scholarship. And I'm going, really? I mean, you got to bump that up. I'm sorry. You got to make it attractive. So,
I hear you. It's a lot of
yeah.
time. What
Yeah.
about this? What about a video? If you're applying for a scholarship or applying for college,
Hmm.
what about a video presentation?
If they ask for it. The thing to remember, this is always the rule about this. If they don't ask for it, they're probably not going to look at it. Like
Interesting.
I have students sometimes that say, well, I want to send a resume. When then there's a section on obviously on applications on the Common App that is list all your activities, 10 of them,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
If they don't want a resume, if they don't give you the opportunity, they're not going to read it. You have to remember these admissions committees are reading thousands and thousands and thousands of applications. They're not going to look at that stuff.
But what about a video format?
Again, same thing. I mean, if they
Yeah.
don't ask for it, they're not going to look at it. Now, some schools have dabbled in that. Goucher College, great example. They used to have a huge like send us a video. We'll definitely consider that. They got rid of that.
Hmm.
So, but there's some other schools kind of lingering around. It's not a big thing though, to be
No,
honest with
really
you. It's not. No.
interesting.
Yeah, you thought it was bigger than it was.
I did.
No.
I thought, and I know a couple of schools that do it, but
Yeah,
um,
couple.
yeah. Well,
Right.
but so they, the applicant can't, have mom and dad read it and proofread it, and you proofread it, and everybody else proofread it, and
Yep.
yada yada. You have to look at the camera, right? Your nonverbal cues,
Right.
I think, says a lot.
I agree. I think that ways to humanize the application are very important, but it's unfortunate in the sense that the admissions committees, the admissions offices are saddled with so much to do that their workforce can only do so much. So
Yeah.
like interview, I'm a big fan of interviews. I think anytime I've met students, many a student that I'm like, if you have an opportunity to interview, you should take advantage of it because you're gregarious, you're extrovert, you handle that well, that kind of thing. But a lot of times they don't have that opportunity because they just don't do it. Some do, but the majority of them don't because they don't have the time to do it.
You know
The
what they
thing
need
to
to do?
remember too, I just want to say this though, keep in mind this. Colleges and universities want to find ways to admit students though. This is not an adversarial relationship. Remember, they have to create a class every year, and that is incredibly difficult in this day and age, financially, if not geographically, the transition, all the things we've been talking about. But they want to find ways to admit students. So when a student goes, oh my God, my SAT score isn't as strong, it's not in the mid 50%, it's not the average. I go, you should still apply. They're going to find ways to try to admit you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, what a process, right?
Right. I call it job security.
Job security.
I mean, it is. It's
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
What a process. I'm
Right.
glad I'm over that. What else you got on your sheet there in terms of bullet points you want to review real quick?
I would say picking your teachers for letters of recommendation. Juniors especially are going to be entering this step in the process. They want to pick one, if not two. I don't recommend always two because sometimes schools only want one letter. And usually they want something from the counselor, whether the counselor is somebody who doesn't know them very well, or in my case, like I write a personal letter of recommendation for every student that I work with at my school, as I always have, but I've only worked at private schools. But make sure that the teacher that you have usually is current for you, like junior, senior year. A freshman year teacher you took one semester is not really going to be, because that doesn't speak to who you are now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the teacher letter of recommendation is going to talk about you within the realm of the classroom. Were you, a great participator? Were you insightful? Were you thoughtful in your work? How were you with time management skills? These kinds of things. And that's what a teacher letter is going to espouse, because one of the things that an admissions committee wants to find out is, can you do the work?
Mm-hmm.
On our level, and the teacher's gonna really indicate that because they're the ones that have been with you every single day and doing that.
Sure.
I usually say in terms of picking teachers, like if you're going for a specific major, a pre-med, an engineering, science and math, of course, right? You're going to computer science, you want your computer science teacher. You're going into ballet, you want your ballet teacher, that kind of thing. But if you can, if they accept to, usually somebody more in the scientific, analytical realm, the math, science, computer science, and then somebody more in the arts, liberal, English, history, foreign language, et cetera, et cetera. So getting a well-rounded view of who the student is.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So
Now,
that's a big bullet point. Go ahead.
how far in advance should they request that letter of recommendation?
Juniors
Not
should
the
be
week
thinking
before,
about that next month. I
next
would
month.
say right before they leave for school at the very least. But all you need to do is ask a teacher now, juniors, by the way. You just need to say, hey, I'm going to apply to college next year. Would you write me a letter? Follow the lead of the teacher. The teacher sometimes says, yeah, we'll talk about that in the fall. Or they'll say, yeah, give me some information. I need to interview you, or I need a resume from you. I mean, always follow their lead. But a lot of times teachers are like, yeah, no problem.
But definitely not the week before.
Yeah, you do that before the summer. And a lot
Yeah.
of times, people think, well, over the summer, the teacher will write the letter. That's their prerogative, especially if they're not employed over the summer. Like, I'm a 10-month employee. I don't work over the summer. So I don't write my letters over the summer because I'm not doing that. So,
Must be nice. Must be nice.
no, I mean, I'm still busy. 10-month doesn't mean like I just sit around. I'm still looking at emails. I go into the school on occasion, but that's my prerogative to do. But
Sure.
you also have to remember too, we get a paycheck, but remember the paycheck's based on 10 months salary, not based on 12 months. So,
Yeah.
it's different. Yeah.
I think the outside looking in, think it's different.
Yeah. People always think, oh, you get summers off and it's paid. I'm like, you don't quite understand what we're doing, but okay.
I hear you. Well, this is good stuff.
Good.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We covered a lot in
We did.
I wouldn't say short amount of time. We're on the 40 minutes now. That's cool.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Can I
So
make one plug?
Maybe we'll do it again.
Yeah, I'd love to. So if anyone who's listening to this, follow me. I'm on Instagram and TikTok, Mr. C, the college counselor. Please
All right.
come
You're
enjoy.
going to send me that information, and I'm going to add it to our deal
Thank
here.
you so much.
All right. Stand by 1 second.